Hey folks, Nathan here. This is my YouTube channel, and this is our continuing coverage in Nate's favorite deck building games of the DC deck building game. This will be a quick one here because there's only one item of this type for us to look at. This is looking at the first and so far only of the DC deck building game Rivals games, which is a standalone game here. Batman versus Joker. Rather than being a game that is designed for a large number of players, generally 3 to 5 players, this game is made for only 2. And because of that, it plays out a little bit differently. I think it'll help to highlight those differences if I show you this on one of those playmats from the other regular sets. So we have our much smaller box here that gives you an indication it's a little bit different. It does have its own rule book that's very similar to the other games, but of course changes it for the rules necessary for this standalone game. Everybody's going to start out with a hand, of course, of 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 punch cards. They're all changed and themed to match the idea of Batman versus Joker, so we'll start with some punch cards. Each player is going to have 3 vulnerability cards, again, going back to that whole theme of having a different image, as every set so far has. We have our kick cards that are available, only this time it's only 8 of them, as opposed to 16. We have our weakness cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, instead of 20 this time. So again, essentially with kicks and weaknesses, it's half the number of cards you'd see in a regular set. We have our main deck, 60 cards this time instead of 111 or 112, all Batman type themed, but we're back to sort of the normal, location, hero, villain, equipment, superpower, same types of cards we generally see. The big difference is that since this is a 2-player game where you're facing off with each other, you're not both playing on the same side of the law. One of you is Batman, one of you is Joker, so you can't actually both be going after supervillains, right? Joker would be going after superheroes. Joker would be pulling a forever evil kind of thing, rather than going after supervillains to help Batman, and Batman, on the flip side, would be going after the supervillains, not after the heroes, I guess usually. I'm thinking of the Batman v Superman movie there. So instead, each of you has a different set of targets. Remember that in this game, you represent a specific superhero, so you have an oversized superhero card to represent you as you play. Usually, they just have game text on them for a special ability, but not for Rivals. Whoever plays as the Joker starts with this card, a supervillain card for the Joker. Looks a little bit different than the standard cards that we see for our characters and the other ones. It's got its game text, but notice it's also got a victory point number and a power cost here. Okay, same thing with Batman. You start out with one very similar ability, 4 victory points, cost of 9, as before. What happens, though, is essentially this acts as your supervillain or your superhero that you are going after. Joker's trying to take out Batman, Batman's trying to take out Joker. So it's over on your side of the table and you're using your ability. But if the other side is able to issue a challenge and go after you and try to knock out the rival and spend 9 power, they're able to knock out Batman or Joker. But then comes a new upgraded version with a power cost of 12 and a victory points amount of 6 and a new ability. When that one's taken out, the last one with a power cost of 15 comes up, and if you take out this one, no point value, it just says, you win. Whoever takes out the 3rd incarnation of the other guy's character, either Batman or Joker, wins the game. Here, by the way, are those different versions, for those curious, of the Joker. In 9, 12, and 15, victory point values of 4, 6, and you win! Now, one thing that makes this a particularly interesting variant on the game is how you have to go after Batman and the Joker. The way you do this is through confrontations. In a normal game, something's sitting there as a supervillain or a superhero for forever evil, and you're attacking them at any point on your turn if you got enough power to do so. Not so this time. On a regular turn, you can't just go after Batman or the Joker. You can only acquire the cards from the lineup. Instead, you have to declare a confrontation at the beginning of your turn. When you declare a confrontation, it allows you to go after the other guy, but it also keeps you from being able to acquire anything by buying anything from the lineup that turn. So you have to basically go all in. And it's at the beginning of your turn when you decide this. So the hope is that looking at your hand, you're able to see, okay, I've got 9 or 12 or 15 or however much power that I'm going to need to take out my rival here, or at least that version of my rival. But you don't actually know for sure until you actually start playing the card. So it's kind of a gamble to call for a confrontation. And once the confrontation happens, this game has some aspects to it that are unlike others. There are some that are similar. So attack and defense, those work the same way. While you're playing, when you're in a confrontation or outside of a confrontation, you can use a regular attack power on a card, and to get rid of the effect of that, the other player could play a card with a defense power. Those still work the same as in the regular game. But outside of regular attack and defense, you'll also see some cards that say things like, during a confrontation, additional +1 power if there are no heroes in the lineup. Okay, so there are some cards that give you a during a confrontation line, which is new to this set because confrontations don't exist in the other sets, or when you're going after the enemy can pull out a card and play a block. Block. During a confrontation, you may discard this card. If you do, add however much, in this case 3, to your character's cost this turn. So maybe the player who's attacking, who initiates the confrontation, thinks they only need, say, 9 to take out the original version of the Joker. Only it turns out that while they build up, say, 10 power, they think they've got 1 more than they need. The other player winds up playing a block during that confrontation, discarding this card, adding 3 to their cost. Now, instead of 9, it costs 12, and that character over there who's got 10 power trying to go after the Joker can't do it anymore and fails that confrontation, which basically just means a wasted turn because you weren't able to go after the Joker, and because of doing a confrontation, you couldn't acquire things from the lineup. I should also point out that if somehow you got up enough power to be able to have enough to knock out all 3 in 1 turn, doesn't matter. You can only do a confrontation to knock out 1 version of your opponent, of your rival, per turn. You could do it multiple turns in a row back to back, no problem. But you can't take out this version and then this version if, say, you have 21 power. That 9 and that 12 cannot be combined into a single turn. It's kind of a cool variant on it, good for 2 players, give you a sense of sort of the mano-a-mano, one-on-one nature of the conflict, and feels a little more personal than when you're playing the other games where it's all about going after either the villains as a pair of heroes or a group of heroes, or as the heroes as a group or pair of villains who are just kind of acting in the same situation where victory points decide everything. If you do, by the way, get to a point where the lineup can't be refilled from the main deck, yes, the game does end as normal, and yes, it's based on victory points at that point. So it's either based on victory points from this running out and not being able to refill the lineup at the end of a turn, or by somebody taking out the 3rd version of the other. Because notice it doesn't just say a huge number of points, it says you win. That is a game ender. And note that that does depend on who takes out the rival, whereas you may recall that in the regular game, who takes out the last supervillain doesn't win the game for that person. It just gives them a supervillain that's worth a heck of a lot of victory points towards their total. Here, being the one to take out the other side, having that last killing blow, actually does win the game for you. So yes, a little bit different victory conditions, but a fun variant nonetheless.